Hello, well, it's me again. Happy New Year, everybody. A few weeks ago, we had a couple of news stories on the universe page. 3 to be specific. 1 featuring Zolani and 2 featuring something Void related. At the moment of writing this script, there's a pair of teasers for this season's cinematic, The Call, and my boy Echius is staring menacingly at something. If we get to see Orn or Lysandra in the following days, then it's time to ring the alarms, because the Void is more closer than it's ever been. So why don't we take a look at these stories and break down what we have and see what it tells us about the future. And without further ado, let's get right into it. The first story is titled The Feast of the Prophet, and it takes us with a man called Mayor. He followed a group of cultists into the tented city of the Prophet on the edge of the desert. Beyond the outcropping of rock where tonight's sermon will take place was a hole, descending deep beneath the Shuriman sands into an emptiness growing and alive. Throughout the day, cultists threw livestock into the hole. They threw each other into the hole, and sometimes they threw themselves into the void. And it responded by growing steadily larger and larger, so more things could fall in, and the pattern will repeat until something big could fit in. Maybe a city such as Nashrameh. But even if the whole settlement and its ports were to fall in the hole, it will only graze its sides. Nobody knew this was here, and he cannot risk getting found out. The cultists didn't look like people. Some of them had a lavender glint behind their eyes that seems to spread over their faces in veining and twisting patterns. They murmur constantly about Icathia and something called the Void. He cannot go back home. He's not even sure if his home still exists. And yet he cannot flee anywhere but farther south, where the land turns grey and things named after all the storybook monsters scream across the rocks. If he stops, Noxus will find him, and because he's struck an officer, they'll kill him. One man asks him if he came to see the prophet, as the crowd shuffles into an open area resembling a theater stage. Knowing the cultists won't let him through without hearing one of their sermons, Mer says yes. The cultist welcomes him to the nameless city. Like many others, some seek the prophet, others seek nothing. In the end, it's all the same. He doesn't have to worry about that. Soon he will understand. The prophet will show him. The evening stars wink ominously above the crowd lanterns. Beyond these lights was the desert. Beyond that lies the hole. And on the other side of the hole, freedom. He's almost there. Shurima is being swallowed up from 3 sides. In the north, Noxus spreads along the coast like a cancer, claiming everything from city-states to farming settlements of 12 souls. In the ruins of the ancient capital, the now resurrected Emperor Homa Asir is set to prepare for an inevitable war. And in the southeast, well, this was the southeast. These people were eating it. There has to be something beyond the hole, down along the grey, lifeless coast at the southernmost tip of the Cathian Peninsula. A smuggler's port, or maybe a stop off for fishing ships from Bilswalla? Mayor could catch a boat, start over in the Serpent Isles. But then the cultist threatens him to stop thinking. The man's face was a pair of those shuttered glowing eyes looking back at him. He tells him his thoughts were being too loud. Malzahar has come. The so-called prophet is covered in scarves and cloaks crudely marked with the symbols of old Icathia. His feet are bare, his hands seemingly frozen in a rigor mortis grip, as though he were trying to fend off some kind of creature. His face is obscured by a long violet robe, and his head... Malzahar's entire skull was thin, composed of fleshy webbings with something horrible inside. A pale light pulsating outward. When he spoke, his voice wasn't his voice at all. It was a projection inside of mere thoughts, an extension of the prophet's own light. My children, tonight is a night of confession. Now it's too late. Malzahar sees Mir. He's not sure how, but amid the crowd of hundreds, the prophet's gaze rips through him, holding his body in place. Ah, a newcomer. Then let this be your awakening. There are flashes within Mir's mind. An enormous shape, looming behind the prophet and filling the entire night sky. Buildings, inverted and crooked beneath a vast and natural ocean filled with thousands of voracious creatures. And the name.
Believers, I have always told you that the end is certain. The void will come and wash away the world and all its miseries, and with it, each and every one of you.
Mayor's mind is ripping itself apart. Thoughts snap in and out so quickly he cannot even track what he's experiencing. Wings, spiders the size of wolves, a figure floating beneath Shurima, a battle. Nox is consumed by an impossible wave of creatures, ice breaking, things tumbling upwards. He sees Malzahar again, shadowed by a shape too large. A female shape?
But we're all changed by our own experiences, aren't we? I watched my parents die in a background, waste away to illness. And yet, they're not gone. Their memories serve a purpose, and the imprint they left on me made what I am. And what I am made you. The void has tasted these memories, and it wants more.
The cultists throw their arms upwards, and the stars wing closer than ever before. Mayor must hold on. Freedom is just beyond the chasm. He tries to think, but words drain from his mind. Before him, before them all, there's just Malzahar. There's nothing else.
The void has embraced a new form, a new possibility. I once saw the world end in the absence of light and darkness, the totality of nothing, and that was wrong. So tonight, to all my children, I confess. The void has spoken, and now, beneath her sea of lavender, she wants you. Your memories, your experiences, your existence. She wants everything. And she will have it.
Mayor only begins to run when the ground gives way under his feet. The chasm's sudden expansion swallows them all. The tent city, the cultists, everything. As Malzahar floats above, surrounded by a purple aura, watching them all pour down into the throbbing animated nothing. Some of the cultists freeze mid-air. Darkly luminous corals burst from their skin before they're sucked into the walls of the hole. Others are torn limb by skulls of iridescent fish. Others lose a scream before vanishing completely. Mayor's memories, like the stars above, win out one by one, as he falls faster and faster, drifting down beneath the lavender sea. Past the strange and inverted buildings, shooting awkwardly from the light-dappled nothingness beyond the void's hideous living sky, and it catches a glimpse of something massive on the verge of being born. As his memories fade, the shape seems to move, responding to his new source of substance, growing stronger as Mayor, the causes, the animals, the tents, as they all fade away, repurposed into something terrible and new. A man once named Mayor closes his eyes as he touches the bottom of the void, and then he is gone. Okay, this reveals us a few things. First, Noxus is expanding rapidly across the north. The war, as Zir is preparing for, is against Sherath and his followers in Nerimaseth. We know that thanks to lore and Pantheon's color story. And it seems that Malzahar has been busy spreading the void beyond the Cycle Lake. Also, we have a few more details about the Prophet's mutation. Paralyzed hands, a thin and almost translucent skull. That might explain the light coming out of his forehead. As I pointed out in the last video, he appears unable to speak to and communicates telepathically with his believers. But why don't we address the void elephant under the room? The things Mayor sees in his visions. The ice breaking refers to the Watchers, and the battle could refer to Azir versus Sherath. But what's interesting here is the shape looming behind Malzahar. He has always talked about the void as a thing, the end of all existence, but now it has changed, acquired a new form, a female form. But don't be fooled, the shape the void took is not pretty at all, trust me. I'm looking at you, Kaisa. The other thing is the inverted city. Where did that thing came from? Wasn't the void supposed to be made of nothing? And yeah, when Mayor touches the bottom of the void, he just disappears. That is probably an entrance to the void realm. And as I said before, anything that tries to enter the void is undone immediately. But now let's think of what the prophet said. The memories of his parents serve a new purpose. These people will serve a new purpose. The things the Watchers absorbed thousands of years ago serve a new purpose. And Icathia's fall serves a new purpose. The inverted city, I think, is what happened to Icathia after it was consumed by the void. That's why Malzahar uses their symbols on his clothes and the cultists murmur its name. And just as a fun fact, the cultists refer to the camp as the Nameless City, which is a reference to the homonymous book by H.P. Lovecraft, which in the Cthulhu mythos is said to be located near the city of the Pillars of Iran, which was the inspiration for Icathia. I have no idea what the thing in the verge of being born could be. Maybe it's a powerful voidborn, Cho'Gath's rework, a watcher, or the female shape Malzahar saw was that. Whatever the case, we'll find out later with the release of the new Void Champion. The other story we have is titled The Faceless God. I don't think it can be tied to this one, but hey, it's another Void story, so let's have a look at it, shall we? This takes us with a stonemason called Menas in the settlement of Sholan, near the Cycle Lake. They were a small community of artisans, and were tasked to restore a statue of an ascended goddess of old Shurima, a so-called Zolani. The sun was rising. He was on his way to the work zone. The cold wind carries the smell of something foul, like spoiled meat or rancid milk. They were in a safe place though. No bandits used to came in that route. It was said that the great Zolani watched over them, so they can restore her old glory. When he first saw the statue, it was worn by centuries of neglect. Some ancient wounds slashed clean through her carven stone face, leaving no hint of the god warrior's true likeness. And their task was to give her one. As he takes a leap to the upper portion of the statue, Menas greets his mentor, the Archmason Noria. From up there, they had a good look of their community. A cluster of no more than 200 souls gathered around a small lake with some patches of green. They were all to vanish tomorrow as soon as the statue is completed, a testament of a 2 decades work. A wide channel cut through the middle of the town before disappearing beneath the sands of the Cycle Lake. If the stories of the Hawk Emperor restoring the old capital are true, little of his bounty came their way. But as soon as Zolani faces his return, the waters of the Oasis of Dawn will flow once again. Noria asks him to tell her about Zolani, as her eyes were fixed somewhere far away. This is a habit he has fallen into recently. He doesn't mind at all. It is good to remember why did they devoted their lives to restore the face of the Ascended, even if much of what they know is a bit fragmentary. Great Zolani was said to be the daughter of a healer, born under the aspect of the Protector. She lived in a time of great change for Shurima. The war against the vile thaumaturges of Icathia had just begun, and the armies of the Emperor were defeated before their walls. Zolani's worked tirelessly to save as many lives as she could. It is said that she saved hundreds, maybe thousands of lives, but mourns that they were saved only to be sent back into the fighting. Some say she even spoke out against the Emperor, calling him a warmonger and a despot. Menas personally found that part unlikely. If he spoke out against the Emperor, why would he later agree to her being gifted with ascension? Noria adds that it was not the Emperor who decreed who would rise to meet the sun, but the priests who read the augurs and charted the course of the future in the beams of its golden light. Rare would it be for any emperor to defy the will of the sun? He continues, although this part of the story gets a bit more obscure. There was a war. Without the Hawk Emperor as here to guide them, a great conflict erupted between the ascended host. There is little mention of her taking part in the wars between the god warriors and those who would be known and feared as Darkins. There are veiled references to a being known as Ta-Nari begging her to intervene and save the lives of the fallen. In some tellings, she refuses, while others said she chose to bestow her gifts on those she deemed worthy. that she knew the innermost secrets of blood so deeply she could even return the dead to life. A final tale speaks of how she angered the most vicious of the Darkins, who struck her a fatal blow that laid her low for many centuries. At last they get to the top. During the day the workers focused in the color and polished a few tiny details here and there. The only thing left was her face. The sun was setting and Noria approaches Menas. She says that tonight's meeting with the elders would be special, and gives him a scroll with a sketch of the finished statue. The face was beyond compare, a chimeric blend of the inhuman and the sublime. There is deep wisdom in the dark pools of its hooded eyes, infinite compassion, but also the capacity for little violence inherent in each of the god warriors. It was astounding, but how was she sure this was the real Zolani? She plays a bit with the answer, but at last she sighs and sits beside him. Now he could see the toll the years have taken on her. She confesses that this will be her last work. She inherited a heart disease from her mother. She was older than both her and her grandmother when they died, and didn't wish to pass out before seeing her greatest work completed. Menas wasn't sure this was the real face, but Noria only wanted to see the water flow once again. That night Menas couldn't sleep. He could hear the voices coming from the hall of the Masons. He already knew what was going to happen. They would accept Noria's sketch because it was miraculous, and because they were tired of not knowing how the Ascended looked like. They've been trying for decades with no success, but how could beings so far removed from the age of the Ascended ever hope to imagine or even know their likeness? He gets up of the bed when a whisper of warm breath sighs through his window. Burying a sound, a clicking sound, like a pygmy owl using its chirps to allure insects. He climbs the ladder to his roof. He wasn't expecting to see any owl, but what he gazes is something far more stranger. The lake was gone, leaving an empty rock basin, its banks patterned with a curious spiral. The warm wind seems to emanate from the lake, and Menas goes to take a closer look. They didn't rely on the lake for their water, but seeing it vanish just before revealing Zolani's face seemed like a bad omen. The lake bed was vitrified, and the chirping sound came from the center of the spiral. He stumbles upon some disfigured stone faces other masons probably left in their attempts of immortalizing the Ascended. The moonlight skitters over the rippled glass beneath his feet, and the ground began to glow with a pulsing inner radiance, synchronized with his own heartbeat. He found the source of the chirping sound. The center of the spiral is cracked, split open and sunken, and the same stench from this morning spewed from there. The smell makes him take a few steps backward, and he notices a giant shard of stone. The exposed stone surfaces shine like polished porcelain. Its eyes seem to glimmer with a wisdom far beyond anything he could ever conceive, and tries to memorize every contour, knowing that Zolani herself has guided him to this revelation. He must have called the elders to see this, but as soon as the thought forms in his head, the crack in the middle of the lake breaks apart, and portions of its bed falls downwards, drowned into the forming sinkhole. He managed to scramble backwards as the crack spreads wider. The charnel stench erupts from below, and the night grows still. Something emerges from the hole. A pale, spindle-thin appendage similar to a worm. It is swiftly followed by another, and together they hold the pulsating, segmented body of a thing from below. Its soft, grub-like body tapered, wet and glistening. Another creature holds its insect-like bulk to the surface, and more were following. Menas manages to push himself up from the shore. He weeps as the porcelain face is obscured by the monstrous forms, and melts like wax at the thing's presence. He screams to warn them, and someone rings a warning bell, but it will do no good. He rolls on his back as one of the creatures rears him. Its chest splits open, revealing a fleshy cavity of toothed tentacles and barbed fangs. It falls on his body, devouring him in a frenzy of ripping teeth. It's agony beyond imagining. But he cannot die looking at this nightmarish creature. He turns his head up to ascend at Zolani. She was supposed to watch over them, but the statue has no face, and so she says nothing. Okay, there's a lot to unpack here. First of all, Ascended Zolani, a healer so powerful she could bring the dead back to life. It also mentions the name Ta'anari. For those who don't know, Ta'anari was an ancient Darkin who made a deal with Zoe's predecessor to seal the remaining Darkins. If Ta'anari asks her to use her powers to resurrect the fallen, that makes her responsible for the creation of the Darkins and Emomancy as we know of. Although blood magic was ultimately the reason why Aatrox is such in a bad mood and tries to off himself so much, but that's a story for another day. The things that emerge from the lake sound an awful lot like Kog'maw, or at least a variant of his species. Putrid stains, the size of hounds, crop shapes, and a stupidly large mouth. Yeah, it sounds like our boy Caterpillar to me. But anyways, I think that's it for this video. I'm planning to cover the cinematic that will come out with Season 12, so yeah, stay tuned for the channel and turn on notifications, hit the like button, subscribe, and all that is. My name's Trem, and see you all next time. Bye bye.